Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and together with my co-host, Mark Ronich at jbiztechvalley.com, statewide news service, and now, as you can see right here, it's columnist for the Jewish Press.
And I'm having a lot of fun doing all three assignments. And my column in the Jewish Press is called Albany Beat, and I talk about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. But someone who's going to talk to us about the Jewish community in the Mohawk Valley is our guest today, Bob Cudmore. Welcome to the Jewish View.
Glad to be here, Mark. Nice to meet you, Rabbi Simon.
Very good. Excellent. Well, you're famous in the Capital District, I can tell you that much. Everybody knows you over here.
52 years in broadcasting.
Yeah, more than 50.
More than 50, okay.
Yeah, that's something.
And I'm just so happy that, we had this chance now. I mean, I was on your radio show, you're on this TV show. We've talked on the phone a lot, obviously in radio, that's what you do.
Yeah, we do.
So I think that it's great to have you here, and thanks for coming all the way from, you live in Schenectady County.
Yeah, I live in Glenville. It's not that far.
And then but Amsterdam was a place that you...
Yes, I write in my books primarily about Amsterdam and the Mohawk Valley, other communities up there.
Well, we also have to tell you that today is our third anniversary of the Jewish View being taped at Channel Albany at the Albany Public Library.
Congratulations.
Thank you. 370 shows in 3 years.
A lot of work over here.
I know.
And a lot of time he's put in with me. Or put up
That's
with
the
me.
biggest miracle of all.
So hopefully you'll say a bracha, and we'll be able to have a little cake. And
all right. Well, you don't have a l'chaim either here, Mark.
no, I didn't bring the l'chaim, but you
Not
can have
prepared.
you can have this cake. So,
Give me a little piece of yours.
Okay.
I might take this apart. At least we have a kosher biscuit over here.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's the main.
Mark and I were ready to go with that.
That's right. But
Gotta hold up. All right, a nice bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'chaolam, borei minei mazonos.
oh man,
Oh, yeah.
very good.
Thank God that He's brought us to here to where we've been doing that, and tens of thousands of people have been watching us, so we've been very successful in these 3 years, and a blessing for the future. We should continue and grow our show, and that even more viewers should be able to learn about the Jewish view of life.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you gave us that blessing. Thank you.
That's what a rabbi does.
That's right. And you do it so well. All right. Well, let's talk about you wrote 3 books.
Yes, I have 3 history books, stories from the Mohawk Valley, hidden history of the Mohawk Valley, and lost Mohawk Valley.
So we have the books here. Yeah, let's talk about Lost Mohawk
I mean, when
Valley.
you talk about Mohawk Valley, you're talking about the American Indians, Native Americans?
I
Is that what-
I write some of that, but primarily I deal with a more recent history. In fact, my stock and trade is kind of history that's happened within the last 100 years.
Right.
I do a weekly column for the Daily Gazette newspaper in Schenectady, and that's what appeals to my audience, if you will. Things that either they remember or their families remembered and things
Probably
like
from
that.
their grandparents.
Yeah.
So tell us about your book.
Yeah.
You got about 1 minute to give over a whole book report, but all right.
Well, again, Mark had asked me to come up with some of the Jewish stories in the
very
book. Certainly the most famous Jew to come from Amsterdam is Kirk Douglas.
Sure.
He was Isur Danielovich. He lived on Eagle Street in the East End. My grandfather and his family lived 3 doors away from the Dems. They weren't known as the Danieloviches, they were known as the Demskys. And in each book, I usually have some reference to Kirk Douglas. The latest book talks about how he adopted that name. Now, I think at this moment in his life, and God willing, he's still alive. I mean, he's going for 100 at the end of this year on his birthday. But he changed his name to Kirk Douglas in about 1938 when he was home for the summer from St. Lawrence University and was acting in the Tamarack Playhouse. And a man who became his lifelong friend as an actor, I believe until he passed, Carl Malden, was also there. And Malden said to Izzy, as he was known, Izzy Dembski, you got to change the name. So supposedly it was Carl Malden that came up with Kirk, and then Izzy Dembski came up with, he wanted to preserve the D in his last name, became Douglas. He said when he took the name Kirk, he didn't realize it was the Scottish word for church, or he might have changed his mind. And I think at this moment, and in fact, he has said, he wrote an article for AARP not too long ago saying that today he probably would have kept Isur Danielovich. He's very proud of that.
It's very interesting because there is a big history of Jewish actors, Jewish people made in Hollywood for the most part. And many of these actors, and they were like befuddled to me too, because you grow up, you see these actors, and I don't know if they're Jewish, you say
right.
If their name is, Mike Goldberg, that must be a Jew.
Right.
But other people like Kirk Douglas, I never, Kirk, like you say, that's a Jewish name.
Right.
He doesn't even look that Jewish in its own right.
Maybe Mark will help us on this. Who's the guy that does the Hanukkah song and he names all the actors? And well, anyway,
Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler. Kirk's in that.
Really.
He mentions him. As one of
the. But it used to be that, like exactly your story, that in the 1930s, 40s, hey, you want to make it in Hollywood,
right.
Give up your Jewishness.
Mm-hmm.
But in Amsterdam, his dad was probably as well known as he was.
Really?
Kirk Douglas wrote of him in the Kirk's autobiography, The Ragman's Son. His father was a ragman, and he said he was the toughest, strongest Jew in Amsterdam. He was a well-known drinker and a bruiser and so forth. And I think throughout his life, Kirk, the actor, kind of sought his father's approval. His mother was a very spiritual woman. Her name was Bryna. And she lived in the Capital District with one of her daughters in, I think it was Troy or perhaps Albany. And Kirk named his production company after her. It's called Bryna Productions.
I didn't even know that. Well, even in his movie actor, again, you could be like in the Jewish, a Nebish, like, Woody Allen.
Yeah,
kind
right. Not Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, Kirk Douglas
No.
came, his persona was always Mr. Tough Guy.
That chin.
Right,
Yeah, Mr.
which his
Tough
son
Guy.
has. His son has that,
has it, too.
yeah.
But, go ahead.
No, in the 19th century, I just want people to know, when they may not know what Amsterdam is known for, besides a few Jews and a synagogue called
Right.
Sons of Israel. In the 19th century, the city of Amsterdam was known for carpet, textile, and pearl button manufacturing.
Oh yeah, did all those
Pearl
things.
button.
Yeah, they did. In fact, they made so many buttons there. They used the buttons to pave the streets in a little amusement park that was built, or the pathways.
And it continued to be the center for carpet making into the 20th century, when the Bigelow, Sanford, and Mohawk Mills carpet companies both were located in Amsterdam, but the companies have relocated to other regions now.
And I must say, to point out a couple of things, which probably should be, and this still relates to Kirk Douglas. In The Ragman's Son, Kirk makes the statement that as far as he knew, the Jews could not get employment in the carpet mills.
Really?
And I've never seen that actually contradicted. He also said he thought Amsterdam was quite an anti-Semitic city, even though I'll tell you a couple of other things about it that maybe seem to speak against that. And that sort of started the anti-Kirk movement in Amsterdam, maybe in the...
Really? He bad-mouthed the city.
Yeah, he came in, and the other point was he had sort of spoken about a teacher he knew that he may have had an affair with, and that people didn't like that.
Yeah.
But I've always been a pro-Kirk Douglas person, because you can't, in a sense, you can't avoid it, and he is this big, important actor.
Sure.
But, and on the plus side of Amsterdam and Jews, 2 of the 20th century mayors were Jewish in Amsterdam.
Oh, really?
Carl Salmon had a couple of terms in the 20s, and a man named Marcus Breyer, who originally was from Brooklyn, was mayor in the 1960s when I was a young man. In fact, I even worked for him in a sense one summer. I got a public works job when I was going off to college.
And you see the guy's name was Salmon.
Yes?
Right.
That's a good Jewish, for lox.
Lox.
Yeah, that's a good
That's
Jewish
right,
guy.
yeah.
But it's interesting. I don't know if you can say about, we know that Amsterdam and these other medium communities, should we say medium-sized communities, have gone a little bit downhill since their heyday, even in Troy, but now it's getting back up. But it's really for the Jewish community also. I think that's why I say it parallels both, because it's interesting, the Jewish people, like when they grew up, they said, hey, let's go to the big city or go to California. So really now it's only a semblance of Jewish community, but also Amsterdam also is, even in the regular community, it's really, maybe because of the textiles.
Amsterdam has the highest population of Puerto Rican Latino density per capita of any outside of New York City and New York State.
Yes,
Didn't know that.
and the latest ethnic group they're moving there are Chinese or Chinese Americans who are Buddhists
Right.
from they originally come from the area of Hong Kong, and they came and purchased a lot of property. And again, as with every ethnic group that comes to Amsterdam, there's controversy about them, but they're very interesting
Why
people.
would they come to Amsterdam, these two groups?
Well, because the property was easy to obtain or inexpensive, cheap, and so they purchased these buildings that they were going to use. In fact, as Catholic churches were closing in Amsterdam, they purchased two of them, and those they've kept up. They've become Buddhist temples, the former St. Casimir's Church and the former St.
What do
Michael's.
they do for a living? I mean, what's the latest industry in Amsterdam?
Well, the manufacturing, continues some, but there's still a company that was founded by a Jewish family, Amsterdam Printing in Littauer. It was the Singer family that operated that. But they employ people, and there are other firms as well. But a lot of folks work in Albany or work in Schenectady. And
What is it, about an hour
Yeah,
commute?
not even that.
Really?
30, 40 minutes.
You know, it's interesting because I knew you were going to bring up the population because you do that a lot with these cities, so I came armed. It's funny, now Amsterdam's population is just about 18,000.
Yeah.
But, if you look at 1890s, it had a growth spurt from 1880 to 1890, from 9,400 to 17,000. It was an 83% increase. And if you look at then in the 1900s, it was 20,000, almost 21.
It peaked at about 35,000 people.
Exactly, in 1930s
Yeah.
and 40s. That was the peak. But if you look at it, the 18,000, it's still where it was in the 1890s.
Yeah.
So it's ebbed and flowed, but it's really remained fairly consistent.
Yeah.
You know.
And one of the things that's happened up there that they're opening right now is the famous or infamous pedestrian bridge. Again, I always was kind of sympathetic toward it. It was funded by a state bond issue, and what they're hoping to do is to create a kind of a situation as occurred on the Hudson River with I forget where it is. There's a old railroad bridge that people just walk across.
Right.
Well, they say be a tourist attraction.
Yeah, making it a tourist attraction and something of that
So
kind.
and also in the Mohawk Valley, does the name Shmuel Gelbfish ring a bell?
Yes, it does.
Sounds like that's a Jewish name now.
Yes, he was from Eastern Europe, went to the, I think, Germany, where he learned glove cutting, which I believe, for many Jews was a trade in Europe. And he was sort of staked, or his group wanted him to get out, or not because they didn't like him, but they wanted to give him an opportunity. So they paid his way to America. So he went to the glove-making capital of America, which is Gloversville.
And he changed his name to
Sam Goldwyn. And
Really?
MGM.
How
he,
did-
yeah, he worked
sure.
up the ladder. He started as a sweeper, was a glove cutter, was a salesman, was a sales manager, moved to New York City, changed, then he got interested in movies and changed his name to Sam Goldwyn.
So you got some real famous Jewish people come out of
Yeah.
that, Amsterdam.
And I read somewhere that Sam Goldwyn, he came in through Canada, and he came in through Maine, and then he kind of worked his way down. I mean, it wasn't like an easy trip.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
And
easy.
it was like he really wanted to get to Gloversville.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know
Glovers-
anyone who was more determined to get to Gloversville.
Yeah. Well, Amsterdam had a Jewish community, but Gloversville had a really substantial Jewish community. In fact, I wish I could think of his name. There's a professor at SUNY Albany who's written about Gloversville, describing it as the shtetl in the Adirondacks. It was because of the glove industry. Most of the glove cutters were either Jewish, Italian, or I believe Croatian, and many of them worked in the glove mills.
But now the textiles have gone. There's
Yeah,
anything there today?
No, the glove mills, or the glove making is basically over. There are some companies that still package the gloves in Gloversville, and I think there's some that still tan the hides. That's why it was a place where they made gloves, because they at first used like deer skin and so forth.
A lot of deer around this area.
Gee,
Yeah,
when
they
my
were.
father said he was going to tan my hide, I didn't think that meant
Go to Gloversville.
Go to Gloversville.
But Gloversville was known as Kingsborough.
It was. And when Sam Goldwyn came back, one time he left Gloversville about, I think, in the early 19-teens, and only came back once. He was invited by, I'm going to say of all things, but why not, a Presbyterian Church men's group to speak to them and I guess to the community, and he spoke at the Kingsborough Hotel, which was a nice hotel in downtown Gloversville. It's now an apartment complex, and when he made his speech, he said, you know, when I was a young man, I dreamed of having enough money to be at the Kingsborough Hotel, and my dream has come true.
We have a picture of Sam Goldwyn, if we could get that up on the screen.
And we also have a picture of the hotel.
Of the hotel, exactly.
It's still there today?
Yes, it's become apartments.
And the, and Gloversville is the main headquarters for the Shine movie industry.
That's true, the Shine family.
This is the picture of the hotel.
there you
Yeah.
go.
And then Sam Goldwyn should be coming up shortly.
But just a word about,
There he is.
I think that was.
There it is, Sam.
Is that Sam Goldwyn?
no,
No.
that's our other one, that's George Senator.
That's George Senator, okay. So this is the,
No, well, I tell you what, we'll do as we do
what
it.
about
Yes,
this?
yes.
Those are, okay, that's Sam Gold.
That's Sam Goldwyn, that's
Yes.
what I thought.
He's a
Okay,
big
thank you.
Big martyr in Hollywood.
Okay, so
Right.
that's what, because most people don't know what Sam Goldwyn looks like. He's
No,
dead so
he-
many years.
yes, he's,
Almost 100 years he's dead.
Right? Yeah, he's
So, but,
He was one of the originators of the movie industry.
motion picture industry, yes.
yeah, so,
How do you go from gloves to movies?
Well-
I mean, that's a. I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
that's like
I'll
an-
tell you.
And then
You speak like even of Kirk Douglas. I think that in these communities, they were dealing basically with textiles. It wasn't like they were making widgets or something, like carpets in Amsterdam, gloves in Gloversville. They're kind of works of art in a way. You know, so
interesting.
I think there was a certain artistic flair in both places.
Interesting.
you know, I have a list of the mayors of Gloversville, and it was interesting that most of the mayors only lasted a year or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's like one, Robert Ramsey, that lasted like almost 10 years or 11 years, and Richard Hood, who was there through the 1960s.
Who were the Jewish mayors? You said there were a few.
I don't know about Gloversville.
No, not
there may have
He
been.
was talking about
Oh,
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam, I'm
Has-
sorry.
But in Gloversville, the
Yeah.
name of the, you know, the best known kind of prominent name is Littauer. He was in the glove industry, he was Jewish. First there was Nathan, who was he came as a peddler and then did well, and his son was Lucius. And Lucius Littauer from Gloversville was Teddy Roosevelt's roommate at Harvard, and
Really?
Lucius became a congressman for a number of terms. He didn't seek re-election one time because of some scandal that broke out, alas. But the Littauers, you know, accumulated a large fortune and have left it, and it was used, for example, for the Nathan Littauer Hospital.
Now-
And the people up there say Nathan Littauer, but the family, I guess, at least today, wants
Littauer?
it Littauer. So,
Okay, that's, and they were Jewish?
yes.
Oh, that's beautiful. And then Dayton King, the current mayor, has been there since 2010.
Right.
So he's
One of the
coming
long
on to
run-
one of the longest running mayors.
Well, he has been. I know Mayor King.
Yeah.
Not
So-
Jewish, but he's a
No,
very nice
but
man.
and he's not from Dayton.
No, he's not from Dayton.
But yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to point that out, and they have a population of about 15,000 in Gloversville, so.
What was the height there? I mean, you were giving the statistics of Amsterdam.
23,000 in the
So it was high.
1950s and 40s, and
You could say that about the whole area, Schenectady and Troy.
Yeah,
I mean, I
things-
don't have the graphs there also, but I know people say in Schenectady in World War II, the old timers, you couldn't walk down the
No,
streets. There was so many people.
Yep.
That's what they
and
tell
then
me.
you talk about Harvard University physician, pathologist, and immunologist, Dr. Albert Coons, grew up in Gloversville. Coons devised the technology of immunofluorescence for microscopes.
Well, I would say that
Microscopy?
currently
I don't know.
the most famous Gloversvillian is Richard Russo, the author,
Oh.
who wrote about.
Well, there's a physicist, William Edelstein,
Yeah.
who was one of the key developers of the MRI scanning.
Really? And he's from there?
And he was born in Gloversville. So, yeah, I mean, way back when. So this was, here it is. In 1899, Sam Goldwyn immigrated from Poland through England to Canada, walked through snow into the United States at an unmanned border point in rural Maine,
Yeah.
eventually
Illegal
making his way to
immigrant.
Gloversville. Now, you got to understand, Maine and Gloversville is not very close.
But he had a goal. He was going
He
to
was
Gloversville.
going. He was
knew that's
determined.
where he was.
You see what he made. He made the whole Hollywood.
You know,
That
and
person
then
had a lot of.
Fredric Remington, was a one-time resident of Gloversville?
He married a woman from Gloversville, the artist, Fredric. He's in my,
sculptor.
that's in my latest book, right? And the man who did Bronco Buster, which is the statue you see in the Oval Office when the president.
I was going to bring my copy, but
Yeah.
I left it home.
Well,
I
it's
had
funny,
one.
the Gloversville Public Library has a copy
Yeah.
that we made a big deal of in the book. We went up and took a picture of it because it was donated to them after Remington's death, and someone stole it in 1929, something like that, but they found it again. So when they put it back in the library, they bolted it to the building.
Really? Let me ask about that. What got you so interested in the Amsterdam, Gloversville, this area, to write about its history? Obviously, it took a lot of work.
I was born there, and I had a career in radio and public relations and so forth.
Well, you're famous.
And eventually, it was the folks at WMHT, who's a man named Don Rogeson, who was the manager, suggested I do a documentary about Amsterdam, which I did with the WMHT director-producer Steve Dunn, and that sort of started it. And then I started doing the newspaper column in the year 2000 for the Daily Gazette, and then in 2011 I started putting out the books.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so we had Lost
All right.
Mohawk Valley, but then we have Hidden History of the Mohawk Valley.
Indeed.
And what sort of a take does that have on?
Well, it's a little darker, but in all honesty, it's probably
it's a
just
black cover.
another another trademark cover of the History Press, who publishes my stuff. But Hidden History begins with a photo shoot that took place in Amsterdam in 1941, just before the start of World War II, which gave an interesting perspective on how life was then. I have a bunch of those photos. It was done by, I'm having a memory lapse now, by a well-known photographer who became an anthropologist who was working for the government. You know, they were going around and taking these photos around the United States. And then Lost Mohawk Valley is to talk about things that are not there anymore. And so I start with the carpet industry, which my father worked in. My father was a carpet weaver. And then the original book was simply stories from the Mohawk Valley. But I found this has become popular again. That's my oldest book, but I seem to be selling at least as much of it as I am of the newest book. I mean,
Now, do your books, get more widely read when something like Guns Along the Mohawk or some movie comes out about the Mohawk?
They could. What's really helped me now is the Thruway Authority has opened a rest area in a place called Randall, New York, which isn't where you can get gas or whatnot, but you get Mohawk Valley products, and so my books are there. And one good thing my publisher did is they put Mohawk Valley in every title. So somebody from Ohio or Nebraska or whatever driving through the Mohawk Valleys looking for a souvenir, there's some things from the Mohawk Valley.
Yeah, I've been here. I went to the Mohawk Valley.
Right.
There you go. Well, that's really great. Now, I also want to talk to you about Fonda.
Pardon?
Fonda,
Okay.
the village
Yes.
of Fonda.
Yes. Well,
It's a village, right? It's not a town.
It's a village. It's the county seat of Montgomery County.
Okay.
It was founded by the Fonda family, in particular a man named Douw Fonda. They're Dutch, but the famous acting family of the 20th century and the 21st, Henry Fonda, Jane Fonda, Peter Fonda, they're all descended from those Fondas.
Right.
And in fact,
From
Mark
around
was...
here?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
are from around?
No, they weren't. I mean, by then,
They're not
the
born
Fondas
here.
had moved
Yeah.
elsewhere. Like Henry Fonda was born somewhere out in the West. But to find their roots, the Fondas have come back to our valley. Mark was telling me that I didn't realize that Peter Fonda had come back. I do know that Jane Fonda has made some visits, as do a lot of people. This is just sort of general interest. At one time, Fonda was part of what was called Tryon County, which in the days of right after or before the Revolution included, it was that area. It was the whole state, basically, or, north of the Mohawk River. So they have genealogical records for a wide area in Fonda. So it's a kind of a cottage industry up there. A lot of genealogists come there to study those records.
And also the Dutch settler that it's named after was scalped in an Indian raid during the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
And I guess there was some affinity about that, so they named, and that's how it got named.
Yes,
yeah.
well, they certainly were, a famous, there was Jealous Fonda was his name, who was the Revolutionary War fighter.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard the part about him being scalped, but I believe he survived the war, so maybe it was a more distant relative.
Now, here's something. As of the census of 2000, guess how many people were in Fonda?
Well, I'd be hard
What radio station did you work for?
I worked for WVTL, which
No.
was in,
No, keep going.
1490?
No, keep
Oh,
going.
810.
That's it.
810 people?
That's right.
Wow. Well,
And I figured of all things that would click with you.
Yeah, Fonda, has lost a lot of population. Also, that part of the valley in particular was buffeted by the floods of 2006, and then with Hurricane Irene and Lee 2011. It's still the county seat, but for example, the jail has been moved away from the river up higher on the hill in the town of Glen, which is just outside Fonda.
Which is a good thing,
Yeah, that's a good thing.
at least for the prisoners
Well, it is, and for the sheriff too.
and for the sheriff. So, what are you going to write another book?
Well, I've been thinking about it. I might.
Jews along the Mohawk?
We could do it. If we do, I'll hire you as a consultant.
There you go.
There you
I'll
go.
do the copywriting
Yeah.
also. Okay.
Yeah, another, I'm trying to think, because I made a whole list of some of the Jewish things.
Yeah,
Oh,
tell
I
us.
didn't bring up in any detail Rabbi Samuel Bloom.
Oh, right.
Who was the rabbi of Congregation Sons of Israel from 1949 to the 1980s. I don't remember the exact day, and he left when he died. And he was well known for radio. He did a weekly commentary on WCSS, one of the local radio stations in Amsterdam, and I did a column about him in the Gazette. Haven't written about him in the book. And his descendants, his son and grandson, they're trying to see if anybody has the recordings of Rabbi
Really,
Bloom.
they didn't keep any.
Yeah, well, that's how.
They didn't have YouTube or anything
Right,
in
no,
those
they
days. No, they-
No, but you know what? A lot of radio stations would keep air checks, and they would keep, archives. But as it got expensive in the very beginning to digitize tapes, whether it's reel-to-reel tapes or cassette tapes, they kind of just said, oh, we'll throw these out. It's just taking up space.
There's one possible source that I've been looking at or trying to talk to this one person who might have them, and the family would really like to hear them. The grandson says he doesn't really remember his grandfather's voice. He'd like to be able to hear it again.
No, that would be wonderful.
Well, our Jewish View is here for eternity.
That's
Yeah,
true.
right.
Well, that's what's going on today.
So
People will see you now.
So what's on the horizon for you from now? What's on the horizon for you?
Well, I do a podcast called
Right.
The Historians, which is on my website, bobcudmore.com, and also on SoundCloud, where I interview people about history. Sometimes it's rather like this, we do most of the interviews, or I do them mostly on the phone, but sometimes I'll go and cover historical conferences. They've started to have one about the American Revolution in the Mohawk Valley every year now in the area of the Western Mohawk Valley, Fort Plain, Canajoharie, and to some extent up in Johnstown at the community college there, Fulton Montgomery Community College. So that's another thing that I've been doing. I also do a radio show weekly now, interviewing the mayor of Albany or some other public official for Magic 590.
But wasn't Condon supposed to do that?
No,
who
he's
I'm
the one
talking
that asked me to do it.
Oh,
For
he's the
whatever
one who
reason,
asked
he
to-
was not, he didn't, no, I've been doing that.
Oh, you've been doing
Yeah.
it. Well, maybe you could suggest to the mayor to come on the Jewish View,
Well,
because she hasn't been.
I'll see her
She likes
tomorrow.
Bob a little bit nicer than us.
Yeah.
We've had 370 episodes of the Jewish View taped already, and we had the mayor on when she was mayor-elect,
Yeah.
but not while she...
But you
but not
have
since-
had her on. You mean
I had
Kathy
her-
Sheehan? Yeah.
Kathy Sheehan,
Right.
only before she was sworn in and after the election. but not since she's been sworn in.
Also, we've had Patrick Madden on when Mayor Sheehan was away. He's a good,
He's been on the show.
He has been. And
Which
Paula
one?
Mahan from
yep.
Colony.
We've
You've had her on?
But we're trying to get Mayor Villa.
Oh, yes, Mayor Michael Villa would be a good
So if you could
choice.
put a good word in
Sure.
for us, he somehow doesn't want to try come down here or
He's
something.
not as,
But is Mario Villa his father? Was that
correct.
his father?
Mario Villa was his father.
Okay.
Or is his father.
I remember
Yeah.
him as mayor.
Yep. And the previous mayor, I wonder if you'd had Ann Thane on
Yes.
just before.
Yes,
Mayor
we had
Villa.
her on because she was president of the Conference of Mayors.
That she
So
was.
we had her on. So yes, we've had a lot of the elected officials from this whole
Now we
capital
have
region.
Bob Cudmore.
got
That's the
Bob
main
Cudmore.
thing. Now
Now we're
really
complete.
great over
Now
here.
we're
you're cooking.
complete.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank
and
you.
Continue with your good word. You're great. We've been listening to you for a long time, and you should continue with good health.
Yes,
All right, you too,
absolutely.
Rabbi.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you very much.